Hello, my exploration class. Today we are going to be talking about value, and value is an important principle of visual design and communication. Value is the relative lightness or darkness of light reflected or emitted from an object or objects. Now, the important word there is the word relative. Relative means this is compared to that, or this is more than or less than that. And in value, it refers to the lightness or darkness. This is lighter than, or this is darker than. So that word relative is incredibly important, because what you will find is that something that has a value that does not change can appear lighter or darker based upon its surroundings. Let's take into consideration this very classic visual game. So, which side of the gray line is darker? I'll let you think about that for another moment. Of course, if you've had some sort of Bazooka Joe bubblegum comic or something like that, this answer has probably shown up, is that neither side is actually darker in the line. The line remains exactly the same value, a medium gray, throughout the entire value scale that you see from light to dark. But on the left-hand side of the value scale, the line appears darker because relatively it is darker than the values that are behind it. Now, on the right-hand side of the value scale, the line appears lighter because the line is lighter than the values that are behind it. So even though the line itself is the same medium gray throughout the entire value scale, it appears darker on the left and it appears lighter on the right. Now, value is actually really important. It can lead your eye, and the reason why it leads your eye is based upon the principle of contrast. The more contrast that there is between a figure and its background, say like the dog on the right and the light background, the more contrast is going to draw your eye. So our eye is naturally drawn from the left-hand side of the doggies to the right-hand side, because the darker one on the right has more contrast with its background because the right-hand dog has more contrast with its background. Now, I'll show you another little section right here. Here we have the most contrast on the left-hand side, but yet our eye still wants to go to the right. But we start solidly on the left-hand side because our eye is drawn there. So why does our eye want to start with the bright dog and then go to the right-hand side? Well, I would argue that is because we live in a Western culture, and the way that we read is from left to right. If you were to go to an Asian culture, they oftentimes read from right to left, like an Asian magazine in China would read from right to left and not from left to right, like we have in our Cosmos and other magazines in English-speaking world and in the Western Hemisphere. Also, a lot of Asian languages will read from top to bottom, from right to left, not in lines that go from left to right or right to left, but from actual lines that descend from the top and you read them vertically downward. So even though our eye is drawn to the dog on the left-hand side, we're still going to naturally move from left to right because of our Western bias. Now, switch the dog around to the bright one on the right-hand side so there's more contrast between it and the background. We're still going to move from left to right, only instead of acting as a starting point, the contrast is going to lead us to an ending point. Now, what allows us to see 3D form in a 2D image? Remember that things that you see that are flat, that are drawings and things like that, they're actually two-dimensional. They don't have any real depth to them, but they can appear like they have depth. And the reason why they appear to have depth is because of the contrast in values. If there were no contrast in values, you would not be able to perceive anything or any type of spatial distance. But because of the contrast in values in the world that you see around you and also in two-dimensional artwork, we can have the sensation of space and of solid objects. Now this next example looks like it could be a computer generated image, but it's actually not. This is actually a painting by the artist Kazuki, and he uses very, very specific values from white to black in order to convey a sense of depth and space. But I can assure you that there is no blending at all between the paints. Each paint is a single flat layer. It's just how the layers are arranged from light to dark gives it the illusion of space and of depth. So again, what allows us to see this three-dimensional form in this two-dimensional image? Here's another image by Kazuki. You can look them up online, but I will say that not all of Kazuki's images are C of O apropos, so just know that you do that at your own risk. Here's a final one, which I think is an interesting landscape with these three orbs hovering over this cityscape. So again, just as a review, the blank of blank allows us to see form in this image, or the contrast of value allows us to see form in this image. The next one that you see is probably an image that you've seen before. It's by a famous mathematician actually named M.C. Escher. And this is a really great example as how you can see shape transform into form based off of the contrast of values that appear in certain areas. If you start off at the sleeve, those are just outline shapes and they seem really, really flat. But the flatness of the shape goes into the volume of the form by placing in differing values that give you a sense of reality or a sense of actual solidity of form in the hands and in the pencil that's drawing. Now I'm going to finish with some images that I am providing from photos that I took while I was in China in 2013. And I just want you to kind of examine them and see how the values add to either the drama of the piece or the communication of the environment. And, well, it really just gives me a way to show you my really cool photos from China as well. I really love this one. They still made handmade brooms in China, and they use them all the time. But I just think it's really interesting that this piece could almost look like it was a photo that was taken in the 1800s as opposed to, 2013. This is a bridge over a brook from a very small town of Yaoli in China, and I just love how the values in the leaves really give you the texture of the environment that we were in. Here is an interior of a really, really old kitchen. I really like how the lightness in the left-hand side balances out this kind of bright section on the right-hand side, and there was an open roof or open ceiling here to the outside, and so this is all natural sunlight that's coming in. There's no artificial light at all. Now in this piece, how does value difference or value contrast lead your eye? Now you should go to the hanging lantern that is in the top part of the photo, and the reason for that is because that is the brightest thing that's in the image. And again, we're still going to go from left to right, and we're going from bottom to up here, and we do that because that is the highest contrast area in the photo, and the background really isolates the shape of the lantern in this particular piece. I'll finish with a photo of one of my students that I took while we were in Shanghai in China, and I just love this piece. And again, it's the kind of darkness of the overall form of the student in his shirt with his hair and his beard and his eyes, but the bright face kind of balances out with the arrow on the left-hand side, which is in that really, really dark background. So you have the dark background of the pavement kind of balancing out with the hair and the shirt. Then you have the brightness of the face balancing out with the brightness of the arrow in the pavement. So with that said, I hope that you all are doing very well. Don't forget to smash that like button, and I'll see you next time.